protected the food in the freezer, and it wasn't that expensive. It was 13 cents per bag, or $3.99 for 30. If you're a bulk shopper, this is the LK Plastics heavyweight freezer bag. This one is even less expensive at 10 cents per bag. It did a pretty good job protecting the food in the freezer. The seal stayed put. It did split right at the very top in our abuse test, but it was the thickest plastic of all of them, and they're available bulk online.
So I've been converted. Nice job. Good proselytizer. I care. The Ziploc double zipper freezer storage bag at $4 for a group of 30 was our winner. So we've been criticized for being pretty tough critics because we test a lot of recipes from other books, and a lot of times they don't work too well. But once in a while, someone comes around who really changes our mind about how to prepare food. And one of them is a guy called Yotam Ottolenghi. He wrote this book plenty a few years ago. He's out of London. And he really changed my mind about vegetables. They're not just side dishes. They're main courses. And he has a recipe in this book for roasted butternut squash, which blew my mind. It was just a whole different way of cooking squash. So we actually took this as a starting point and went into the kitchen here, Dan did, to see what we could do with roasted butternut squash. Do something totally different.
Totally different.
Yeah.
Well, Chris, what I really like about Yotam's approach is that he uses really savory combinations. So we're going to do the same thing today. First thing we're going to start with is prep. So normally we would kind of leave this whole or maybe cut it into chunks and roast it, but he has a much simpler process, which is slicing it into thin half moons. So I'm going to do that. Before that, we need to peel it. And I have this one kind of half peeled here. What you do is you take off that kind of outside part, you see the white there, and then I'm going to keep going until that's gone. You get down to the nice orange. So this will be tender from edge to edge. Okay, so Chris, I'm just going to take off the bottom part here and the top right behind the stem. So now it's time to cut the squash. Starting in the middle of the squash, I use the tip of my knife and I go through and then down. And then I do the reverse here. So I go in and then down. So now I've created flat surfaces that'll be really easy to cut with. So the next thing I'm going to do is just scrape out the seeds and the kind of guts in here. So now it's time to slice up, Chris. So we're going to start on this end, and I'm just going about half-inch thick slices. All the prep that goes into the beginning really makes a big difference on the other end. We've got these nice pieces that are going to cook evenly. They've got a lot of flat surface areas, so we'll get good browning. So here we have all our squash. I'm going to transfer them here to a bowl. Okay, so Chris, before we can roast these, we need to coat them with some fat, and that's going to help them brown a lot. So I've got 3 tablespoons of melted butter here, and a half teaspoon each of salt and pepper. So now I'm just going to kind of give it a toss here, get it well coated in all of that seasoning and butter. So now I've got a baking sheet here, and I'm simply going to spread them out into a nice even layer. And you don't have to be perfect about how you arrange them. So Chris, they're all on the baking sheet. Now it's time to roast. So I'm going to go into a 425-degree oven on the lowest rack.
Okay.
It's going to take a little while for browning to start, somewhere in the range of 30 minutes. That's because there's a lot of water in that squash that we need to drive off before it will really start. And then after 30 minutes, it'll be most brown in the back of the oven where it's touching the pan. We'll give it a rotate, and we'll go for another 6 to 10 minutes. Okay. So while that's happening, I'm going to put together our topping. So I have an 8-inch skillet here. All right, so that's 3 tablespoons of butter, and I also have 1/3 cup of hazelnuts that we toasted and chopped. I'm just going to pop this over medium-low heat. So here we're really taking advantage of the fact that brown butter and hazelnuts share a lot of flavor compounds. As we kind of toast it all together, we're going to get really nice flavor and aroma out of it. So Chris, the butter is melted and it's starting to brown on the edges here, so I'm just going to stir it while it's happening. This takes about 2 minutes really once it gets going. So what I'm going to do is actually remove it from the heat, and I'm going to add a tablespoon of water. Now watch, this is going to sizzle a lot. And so what that does is help stop the browning process. We're adding water in there, it's going to drop the temperature a lot, and as long as you see the steam coming off, it's not really above 212 degrees. And I'm just going to let this sit for about a minute and let it cool down, and then we'll finish off the sauce. Okay, so Chris, this has cooled down a fair amount, and the reason I let that happen is I'm going to add lemon juice, and I want that really fresh lemon juice flavor. I don't want it to taste cooked. So I'm adding a tablespoon of lemon juice, and this is just a pinch of salt. And give that a good stir. And that's it. So I'm going to pop this off the heat here and just let it hang out while we finish roasting our squash.
Okay.
So it's been about 30 minutes. I rotated it another 10 minutes so we get the whole bottom nice and done. These smell good. Now I'm just using a nice thin spatula and I'm going to flip the pieces over. We have really nice browning here, Chris. Now part of it's because it's on the bottom of the oven there, but also because of the butter. So we're going to go back into the 425-degree oven. The second side is going to brown a lot faster because we've already evaporated a lot of the moisture out. So anywhere in the range of 10 to 15 minutes.
Today I have two great new products. They can both save you from buying roll after roll of plastic wrap and maybe even help save the environment too. The first is our favorite set of silicone food covers. These are called the Rachael Ray Top This silicone lid set. They're $19.95 for a set of 3. And these are about 8, 9, and 12 inches. And they turn ordinary bowls into airtight, leak-proof containers for storing or microwaving foods. We actually tested 5 brands, and these were far and away the best and the easiest to use. Now look at this. I'm covering this bowl. I press down a little bit on the top, and that creates a suction seal, and you can pick that bowl right up. In the microwave, the lids keep food from splattering. And because they trap steam, everything reheats more evenly and stays nice and moist. They're perfect for reviving leftover rice or warming up a late plate of dinner. And here's our other new discovery. It's called Bees Wrap. This is a soft muslin cloth that's infused with beeswax and resin. And this coating helps keep everything fresh. You can wrap up anything from leftovers to your sandwich for lunch. You just use the warmth of your hands, and it molds it and helps it stick in place. Now this wrap is not going to be drip proof like the silicone lids, but it can help save food in the fridge for a few days or for your lunch. The wraps come in small, medium, large, and extra large. You get 3 in a pack priced from $16 to $19 depending on the size. This one for bread is 17 by 23 inches. It holds a whole baguette. It costs $15. Now you can use the Bees Wrap again and again. You just wash it in cool water with a mild dish soap and let it air dry. You will get a little waxy residue on your hands or your bowls, but it smells nice and it washes right off. And you can't use this for meat because you can't wash it in hot water. But for wrapping up everything else, Bees Wrap is a great choice.
Oh yeah, that smells good. So Chris, we've
Doesn't look half bad.
Doesn't look half bad.
It looks a lot better than any squash I've ever roasted.
It's great. So it's nice and brown on top and bottom. So we'll pop it over here. And it's almost time to eat. So all I'm going to do now, Chris, is transfer it over to a nice platter. So the squash is really tender at this point, but it has a nice crust on it, so it helps kind of hold it together. So now, Chris, I've got our brown butter hazelnut sauce, and I'm just going to loosely drizzle it around. All right, and just a little bit more there. Finally, I'm going to add a sprinkling of chives on top.
I think it's time to taste it.
All right. Smells so good.
Well, the hazelnuts are savory. You get the brown butter, you get the sweetness of the butternut squash. The browning is great.
I like the texture, too, of the hazelnuts. It's nice not to have everything just soft the whole way through.
So the secrets to a great roasted butternut squash start with butternut squash. But we peeled it down, right down to the orange all the way, cut it into half moons that were thin, some butter on it, not oil, into an oven at the bottom rack, very hot oven, 425, for about 50 minutes, and finally made a brown butter hazelnut sauce with a little bit of lemon juice as well. So there you have it, from America's Test Kitchen to your kitchen, all new way to cook roasted butternut squash. You can get this recipe, all the recipes from the season, get our equipment ratings, taste test, and watch select episodes, of course, at our website, which is americastestkitchen.com.